Hello, Biblical History students. I'm going to make a short video for you today about the books of Joshua and Judges. So let's get right to it so this doesn't go on for too long. It's really important when we read Joshua and Judges to obviously understand the historical context, understand any extra biblical archaeological evidence that might contribute to our understanding of that time. But also, it's also important to make sure we're reading the text correctly, okay? Now, I'm not going to go through every single question for you. You're going to read the chapter yourself. I'm going to do it, but I'm going to kind of touch upon some highlights. Okay. When it comes to Joshua and the conquest of Canaan, scholars debate over what exactly happened, if anything. On one hand, you have the conquest model, which to varying degrees, obviously there's always degrees of this, they read the book of Joshua as kind of like a blitz, like it's the story of Hitler going into France, like it's an invasion of a nation state, conquest, okay? There's the peaceful infiltration model, which basically says that these Hebrews just kind of moved into Canaan and eventually got more, they eventually bound together and they just kind of infiltrated into the land. And therefore the story of the conquest is a fiction. The Peasant Revolt model is this kind of a Marxist view that like the peasants overthrew the ancient bourgeoisie. There's a few people who advocate that. Not too many people buy that. And then there's the various indigenous models that basically argue that the Israelites really were just Canaanites who eventually, over time, took over and then made up this story to legitimize them as the rulers. All right? So, my view leans more toward the conquest model, but we have to tweak it. All right? It's wrong. When you read this, you have to remember that Canaan was not a nation state. Like I said, it wasn't. Therefore, the Israelites going into Canaan was not like Hitler taking over France or Poland or whatever. Okay? That's a wrong way to read Joshua. I think the best way to understand it is taking what we gather from the last chapter, that, in my view, about 20,000 or so Hebrews escaped from Egypt. They made their way eventually back to the land of their forefather Abraham, where he sojourned. And then when they tried to move back into Canaan, these various Canaanite tribes and city-states. What that means is Canaan was not a nation state. There was a number of cities in Canaan that were kind of self-governing states. Those various city-states would occasionally fight against the Israelites as they moved into the land, and there was battles and there was fighting, but A, it didn't happen in a blitzkrieg all at once, and B, as Joshua itself indicates, it happened over a lifetime, okay? So there was entrance into the land, there was battles and fighting with the various kings of the land, but no, it wasn't a blitzkrieg in the matter of a year or two. It was just battles over the course of a lifetime, okay? But what you read in Joshua, because it is a narrative and a kind of a prophetic theological look back at their past, they're not going to take a lifetime to tell everything. They're going to compress everything in a short span of a few chapters. So when you read it, you get the impression that it happened all very quickly, but when you read it closely, it clearly didn't, okay? And basically, just so you know, you could probably find this on a Google picture somewhere. When you read Joshua, the conquest takes 3 stages. There's the initial, starting in chapter 5, there's an initial entrance into the central part of Canaan, that's where they fight, take Jericho and Ai. They get there. A little while later, for reasons if you read it, you'll find out, they make a campaign down in the southern part of Canaan, do stuff there, and then again, a little later after that, there's the northern route where they go up into the Galilee area and they fight a few people there. So there's like 3 campaigns over the course of a lifetime or a generation in which this plays out. Okay, now there's a number of other things as you'll be able to see in the chapter. There's number 4 of your question, the Hendrik Koravar. He talks about how Joshua is sectioned up into 4 sections, which is kind of an interesting thing. It's Joshua 11 through 11:18 that says that there was no blitzkrieg. Joshua had made war a long time with all those kings. So that's what I was getting at. Now, so there's various ways various scholars have tried to understand the literary structure of Joshua. But the big thing you want to know with Joshua is that the issue of what kind of conquest it is. And let me say something here. He doesn't talk about this in the book, but it's important to know. One of the big issues that a lot of people have with Joshua is the book of Joshua is that it seems to genocide, that the Israelites came in and just slaughtered everybody. Again, that's not a good way, an informed way to read the book of Joshua. Because you're reading it in English probably, and when you read it in English, you find various places where it says, Joshua fought against these kings and then utterly destroyed them. And so, utterly destroy, that's men, women, children, that's genocide. The Hebrew word there is harem. And harem literally means to take out of common use. Now, it can mean to destroy something completely, but it basically means to remove something from common use and to utterly dedicate it to God. Okay? Sometimes God wants you to destroy it, sometimes it's for him. Now, what harem means in that case, long story short, is when you read the accounts of Joshua's conquest, they put things to harem. What that means, more than anything, it's not that they killed everything, but rather that they destroyed the pagan monuments and the pagan structures to those various city-states they took over. They didn't kill everybody, they destroyed their pagan structures. It'd be kind of like, I always give this example since I already referred to Hitler, when the Allies went into Germany and defeated the Nazis, they fought the Nazis and they killed the Nazis, Nazi soldiers. They didn't kill every German. What they did when they got into Germany and defeated the Nazis, they tore down Nazi monuments, they tore down Nazi flags. They got rid of all the propaganda and paraphernalia of Nazism so that the German people would not be tempted to embrace that again. And so what you read in Joshua, simply put, is when they go into Canaan, yes, they fight Canaanites. Yes, they kill people because that's what happens when you have wars. But their goal was to destroy the pagan structures. And we know that from Joshua and Judges that they didn't kill all the Canaanites because the Canaanites still lived among them. Okay? So therefore, the description sometimes in Joshua where it talks about, harem, or sometimes it does go overboard, like he just completely, killed everybody. There's a little bit of hyperbole in there, and this is actually number 2 in your chapter. In any ancient Near Eastern document, a conqueror would often engage in hyperbole to kind of hype up his victory. And we've already seen it with I can never say the name, I'm horrible with names, the steel that we talked about in the previous chapter. I can never say it. Let me see here. I know it's here. The Merneptah Stela. In that account, the Pharaoh brags that he has wiped out Israel. His seed is not. That would imply that he completely wiped out Israel. But he didn't literally wipe out Israel because Israel was still around. But it was that language of complete obliteration, I'm the greatest. That's typical when you read ancient Near Eastern accounts. So therefore, when you read Joshua, language like that, you have to interpret it as kind of hyperbolic. Okay, so Joshua, that's some stuff to know about Joshua. Next, about Judges. Judges as Proven points out, you can't read Judges as if it is a literal, chronologically accurate blow-by-blow account over 400 years. There's no real time period that we can nail down. Some scholars think it was a period of 400 years, 200 years. When you read each judge, Ehud, Deborah, Gideon, Jephthah, Samson, even though you're reading the Judges, they come one after the other. They came up within their various tribes. Their time could have overlapped, so we can't nail down the time period of the Judges with any certainty, other than sometime between 1400 and 1200, BC. Proven also mentions when you read Joshua and Judges together, you have to see them kind of working with each other. Joshua focuses on God's faithfulness. Judges focuses on Israel's flawed response to that faithfulness. You have to see how they're depicting their history. And when you do that, I'll give you a quote from Proven there. In broad strokes then, in taking Joshua and Judges together, the biblical description of Israel's emergence in Canaan is internally coherent. Israel entered and gained an initial ascendancy by means of involving military conquest. They became the top dog, but was far less successful in consolidating its victories by fully occupying its territories. And that's kind of what you see in Joshua and Judges. Joshua, they moved in, they defeated some kings and kind of got top dog status, so to speak, after a time. But just having top dog status, they didn't really consolidate everything in a coherent, functional way. Okay, and that's kind of what you see in Judges. They're always falling away. Okay. He also talks about the Amarna Letters again. We talked about that in the previous chapter. He talks about that again here, about the term Ibru. When you read back to the book of Joshua, talking about archaeology, if you read Joshua closely, only 4 cities are mentioned to be completely burned down. So again, that goes to the idea that Joshua, the conquest was not wiping everybody out. They defeated people, wiped out their pagan structures. Only 4 specific cities are mentioned that they actually destroyed completely. Okay, so that's kind of an interesting thing. He's also going to talk about, at the end of the chapter, a number of archaeological issues concerning many of the places mostly Joshua mentions. And this is where Proven's going to talk about how the archaeology we have doesn't line up perfectly with what we read in Joshua all the time, but how do you try to figure that out? How do you take the text seriously and archaeology seriously? He gives some thoughts on that, so pay attention to number 15. That's kind of an interesting thing. And then also number 16, the other key sites. He mentions a number of other places mentioned in Joshua that do line up with what we know with the archaeological evidence. Okay? So hopefully it's a long chapter. That'll help guide you to read the main stuff. So hopefully this will help. All right.